Uh, hello, hello. In the last lecture, we saw three scholars: Horkheimer, Adorno, Marcuse, and Fromm. Right? We saw these four scholars of neo-Marxism. Now we'll understand the next idea in Marxism, or next view in Marxism, which is structural Marxism. Right? Structural Marxism. Now we have understood what does structure mean. Right? We have understood what does structure mean. That idea is going to be helpful in understanding structural Marxism. We have understood structuralism, या फिर what is structure in Marxism, Marx and Gramsci. What does Marx say about structure? That basic structure is economy and superstructure is a reflection of it. What does Gramsci say? Gramsci says that superstructure and basic structure influence each other. This structure I am talking about. There are types of structure and they influence each other. Right? This idea keep in mind to understand structural Marxism. Right? Okay. Why structural Marxism came into public discourse, or how it became structural Marxism, even though there was idea of structuralism already there in Marxism. What happened? What happened so that structural Marxism came back into ideas of Marxism was this rock star of a scholar, rock star of a thinker known as John Paul Sartre. John Paul Sartre, the biggest scholar, the biggest thinker, the biggest philosopher of 20th century, and biggest literature, biggest writer. He is a rock star of a person. He won Nobel Prize and declined it. He had open relationships in that time of France, right? He was a great person, and he influenced youth around the world. He influenced religion, and he opened up ideas, opened up ideas about existence, about religion, and about how to think about life itself, why we are here, why 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 we do things as they do, are things determined, right? All these ideas were given by Sartre. He was a great person. I call him rockstar of philosophy, right? For his funeral, whole Paris turned up. Imagine the influence of a writer. He died, and all the Paris stopped for 2 days. This was influence of John Paul Sartre, great man. He wrote a book known as Existentialism and Humanism. He wrote a book known as Existentialism and Humanism. Right? In his book Existentialism and Humanism, what he tries to do, he tries limits Marxism to concept of he tries to limit Marxism concept of to the concept of alienation. He tries to limit Marxism alienation. He says that he says that the goal of Marx to help man free from alienation. Right? He says primary concern of Marx was free human was to free human from alienation. Right? If primary concern of Marx was to free human from alienation, so humanism was main concern of Marxism. This is what John Paul Sartre tries to say. He says that he says that Marx Marx primary concern was to free human from alienation, and he was a humanistic scholar. He was a humanistic philosopher. Right? Now what happens here? What happens here that Marxist see this as an attack on cores of core doctrines of core things of Marxism, right? Changing by changing the discourse of Marxism from structure, from structure and from critique of capitalism to Sartre changed it to humanism. He limited Marxism alienation. So the whole Marx idea of Marxism started changing. People started looking at Marxism with a humanistic lens. To save to save Marxism from this onslaught, from this attack from Sartre, from this attempt of Sartre to limit Marxism to humanism, Althusser brings concepts. Althusser brings new variety of Marxism known as structural Marxism. To save Marxism from humanism of Sartre, Althusser brought concept of structural Marxism. Structural Marxism, whereby gives first concept of structuralism, right? Structuralism. What does structuralism mean? Right? Structuralism means that there are structures. There are structures in which man tries to live his life. We understood structuralism as its structures of Marx and Gramsci, whereby Marx says economic structure is basic structure, Gramsci says economic structure and basic structure, but superstructure also have importance. Now, this concept of structuralism different from the structure as given by Gramsci and Marx. This concept of structuralism is taken or derived from linguistics. Althusser derives concept of structuralism from science of linguistic, right? Linguistics concept of linguistics has two types, right? Language, to speak a language, there are there are two types, there are two things should be there. Make a language, there should be two things. First, there should be a signifier and there should be signified, right? What is this concept? What is this structuralism? That linguistics says that to make a language, you need two things. First, signifier and second, signified. What does signifier means here? Signifier means sound pattern. And what does signified mean? It means objectives या फिर object which is denoted by this sound pattern, right? This is structuralism in linguistic. That there is going to be a sound which is correlated to an object, whereby in English language, structuralism of English language is like this. If I say lion, what is signified? What is signified? Signified is an object which is lion, animal which is lion, right? So lion as a signifier, this sound lion signifies animal lion. So this is structuralism, right? So we are limiting a signifier to a signified object. This principle of structuralism, that we are limiting a signifier, a signified object, is applied by Althusser to Marxism. He applied structuralism of linguistics to Marxism, right? What happens in structuralism? What happens in structuralism? There is a signifier and there is a signified. That lion will only mean animal lion, right? Lion will only mean an animal which is lion. So what does structuralism does is that it limits a meaning to a particular thing, right? It is very limiting. It is very limiting. Applies this limitation. He applies this limitation of signifier and signified society, right? Society limits society limits your actions, like signifier limits the signified. What sound will mean what is limited by what I am speaking. If I speak lion, it only means animal. This concept is applied in society, whereby society will limit my existence. What I will do or what I will not do, it will be on basis of society expects out of me, right? So there is a type of limitation here. Society signifies that I will be engineer, and I, I the person who is signified, will follow that thing blindly. My every action is signified by the sound pattern which society makes. Society says that I should be married by 27, 28, 29. I, as a person, will blindly follow that and get married. Society signifies that I should study, and I, as a person, will be limited by that expectation and I will study. I won't play, right? So, this is what structuralism in society applies. This is how structuralism in society applies. That we are limited by expectation of society to us. What society demands from us, we do that. As in linguistics, as in language, what what sound pattern tries to explain, we limit that sound pattern an object, right? This is how he made interlinkage between society and linguistics at thing of imitation, that the thing of imitation, right? Now, so as society limits you, me, everyone to expectation, to its expectation, he says that society limits your mind, everyone's action, a particular expression. That is why, Marxism is anti-humanist. Marxism, Marxism humanist नहीं है ऐसा. Marxism is not humanist, as Sartre was mentioning. Marxism is not humanist. Analysis should be done. Analysis should be done on structural level, right? There is no free will. There is no free will. This is what Althusser says. Every action, every action is based on what society is expected from you, me, anyone else. That is why Marxism is anti-humanism. Freedom is freedom from society, right? Right? Freedom is freedom from society, and if freedom is freedom from society, he gives his next concept of multi-structuralism. Right? Freedom is freedom from society. But जो society है, the society is multi-structural. Society has multiple structures. For Marx, society is only economy. For Marx, society is only economy. For Althusser, society is economy, society is culture, society is traditions, right? Society is all these things, right? Society is all these things. Society, if society has multiple structures of economy, of culture, of traditions, then society is complex first, and society is multi-structural. So society is complex and society is multi-structural. For Marx, a social phenomena, a socio-economic phenomena, history moves by economy. Economy is the only determinant that moves history, right? For Althusser, if society is multi-structural, not only the economy that moves history, that moves socio-economy, and he says that Marx, what does Marx do? Marx determines it. Marx overdetermines social phenomena to economy. Marx overdetermines social phenomena to economy. He says that not only economy does not move socio-economic phenomena. Only economy does not move history. There are multiple causes for social phenomena to happen. Right? There are multiple causes for social phenomena to happen. Now, protest anywhere can be on basis of economy, right? But protest socio-economic phenomena, history can be basis of deep rooted inequality, deep-rooted stigmas, some injustice, right? Socio-economic phenomena सिर्फ इकोनॉमी के बेसिस पे मूव नहीं होता. It does not move only on the basis of economy, right? There have been protests for inflation. There have been protests for uh, inequality. There have been protests for rape as well. There have been protests of corruption as well. Socio-economic phenomena does not only move because of economy, it also moves because of uh, society. It also moves because of social phenomena, right? In history, you see examples of Dalit movement. Dalit movement was a social movement. It had strands of economy in it, but it was essentially social. right? In history, you see examples of movements like Mandal crisis, post protest. Post Mandal protest were on back of social phenomena, right? So, so social phenomena, social phenomena are determined by Marx. Marx limits social phenomena to economy, whereby Althusser says that there are multiple things which moves history, right? There are multiple things which moves history, and he says that structures, these structures are relatively autonomous. Structures relatively autonomous. That means what does relative autonomy or Gramsci mean? It means that economic structure influences influences superstructure, culture. Culture also influences economy. They have existence of their own, right? What does relative economy autonomy mean? Right? Relative autonomy means that suppose this is social history and this is economic history. Economic history. These are moving in forward direction. Right? History moves in forward direction. Time moves in forward direction. How these are relatively autonomous, right? Right? And what happens here? Society moves ahead. Societal history moves ahead. It is not necessary. Economic history is the reason it moves, right? Just I gave you example of corruption case, corruption, protest against corruption, protest against rape, right? So case, Nirbhaya case, Nirbhaya case moves history ahead. Because of Nirbhaya case, there is Nirbhaya fund. Legislature has been changed. Now juveniles who commit rape, they can also be persecuted under they can persecuted for death penalty. Like in this moment of history, there is no economy involved, right? And economic history can also move ahead on its own. I will give you example of LPG revolution, 1991. This revolution, this moment of history, this moment of socio-economic phenomena was just because of economic reasons. Did not have enough forex to sustain import for 15 more days. That was the reason why opening up of our economy happened. That is why LPG revolution happened, right? Relatively autonomous structures in social history and economic history can move of their own. Now, but there can be instance that social history and economic history can move together, right? Can move together. I will give you example of Dalit movement. Dalit movement. Why Dalit movement happened? Because of social evil of untouchability. Because of the opportunities that were limited to Savarnas. But it was essentially for untouchability, right? So this social phenomena of untouchability, this social evil of untouchability of economic history, whereby led to things like reservation, whereby it led to things like reservation. Reservation is a social phenomena, but it is also economic phenomena as well. What is reservation for? It is for one of the objective of reservation policy in India is bring out bring out the poorest of poor to a better economic position, right? So this untouchability, social evil of untouchability of social history as well and economic history as well, right? So does relative autonomy or structure mean that social history and economic history can move on their own and they can move together as well? It is not needed. It is not needed that economic history alone moves economic structure alone moves history. Basic structure alone moves history. This is not needed at all. This is what relatively autonomous structure means, right? So what happens if structures are not relatively autonomous? What happens is this, that structures form the new concept we are going to learn here, that structure performs specific effectivity. What does specific effectivity mean? I'll go back to the for examples. Specific effectivity. What does specific effectivity mean? Go back to Gramsci and understand that basic structure influences superstructure, superstructure influences economic basic structure. There is bidirectional influence on both of them by both of them, right? Specific effectivity mean that thing only whereby these structures affect each other, structures influence each other. This is the only meaning of specific effectivity. Structures influence each other, right? Very easy to understand that they affect each other. Specific effectivity is next concept. It means only one thing, that that structures affect each other. Structures influence each other, right? So this was his structuralism, his ideas of structuralism, why he says that society is multi-structural, Marxism is anti-humanist, social phenomena are overdetermined. If social phenomena are overdetermined, that means that there are multiple factors which affects social phenomena, which affects history. If there are multiple factors are which are affecting histories, they can move history on their own as well. Social phenomena can move the history on their own. Economic phenomena can move history on their own. So they don't need each other to move history. That means they are relatively autonomous from each other, right? But they can move history together as well. This is what relative autonomy means. In context of relative autonomy, there is one more concept known as specific effectivity, which means that structures affect each other, society and economy affect each other, right? Now, in moment of history, specific effectivity were understood, whereby structures influence each other. Now, in Marxist idea of moment of history, what does Marx observes moment of history? What does Marx say in moment of history? That history moves in one direction, which is progressive. Progressive class among two classes will win, right? Among serfs and nobles, serfs won. Masters and slaves won. And among capitalist and workers, worker will win. This is what Marx say. Marx say this with a teleological view. Marx say that history is progressive and the class which is progressive will win, right? So he takes teleological view. Teleology view means that history is predetermined to move in progressive direction, right? For Marx, for Marx, evolution is inevitable. Revolution is inevitable. Evolution is final cause. He says that whatever happens, revolution is going to take place. It is the final cause. These are views of Marx. On the other hand, what does Althusser say in Movement of History? Importance to role of chances. He gives importance to role of luck. Role of luck in movement of history he calls aleatory materialism. What does aleatory means? It basically means chances or luck. His next concept is aleatory materialism, which is opposite to dialectical materialism. Dialectical materialism says that history moves in direction of progress, in direction of progressive class. Against this, Althusser says that history is shaped by multiple factors and there are chances that it might not move in positive direction, right? Aleatory materialism means nothing but that history moves not only due to not only due to dialectical materialism, there are factors of chances, there are factors of luck in movement of history, right? World War II was won. World War II was won because England found Alan Turing. There was no Alan Turing, England and its allies would have lost the war. That was the chance of history. That that Enigma machine, that Enigma machine which was created by Alan Turing, that changed his chance changed history, right? Axis would have won except if that machine had not been invented. So, so there was a chance that Axis would have won if England had not invented that machine. So the this was the explanation of aleatory materialism, whereby chances or luck history, unlike dialectical materialism, whereby Marx says that history moves in direction of progressive class. History moves in direction of progressive class, right? Okay. Now jumping to his next idea, which is problematic idea or concept of problematic, right? Sabine, you, me, everyone has learned in Machiavelli, whereby Sabine says that Machiavelli is child of his times. Machiavelli is child of his times, and if Machiavelli was not born in that era, Machiavelli would have had different view. So, what does problematic means? It's nothing but every thinker is child of his times. Your vocabulary, your way of thinking, your language, your concepts all are shaped by the vocabulary, thinking, language, and concept of the time. of the time. Plato wrote his Republic because Athens lost Peloponnesian War. Hobbes wrote Leviathan because he had fear of life. Because civil war happened, because Spanish Armada happened. Their language was derived out of their times as well. Plato talks about soul. Plato talks about dialectic. Plato talks about Elencus. Socrates is philosopher of Agora. Machiavelli talks about what does Machiavelli talks about? Nationalism. What does Locke talk about? Rights of life, liberty, and property. Mill talks about subjection of women. Hannah Arendt talks about totalitarianism. Hannah Arendt talks about Zoon Politikon. Understand that every thinker is limited by the ideas prevalent of time. So they are limited. They are limited to the ideas of the time. Right? This is what problematic signifies. Signifies that it signifies that problematic signifies that limited. You are limited concepts, ideas, vocabulary, language. Most importantly, problems of your time. You are limited to problems of your time. You are limited to questions of your time. To explain his concept of problematic, Althusser gave analysis of young Marx and mature Marx. He gives distinction between young Marx and mature Marx. We are going to understand the concept of problematic through this example itself. Young Marx is influenced by Hegel. He was a part of young Hegelian. Mature Marx on the other hand is influenced by Hegel, but he has other influences as well. He has influence of Engels as well. He has influence of syndicalism as well. He has influence of lot of other things. The main idea of young Marx is alienation. The main concern of mature Marx is revolution. So young Marx is limited to ideas of his time, which was ideas of Hegel and alienation. Mature Marx is limited to ideas of his time, known as of revolution. Right? Why this concept of problematic? Why this concept of problematic? Because Sartre says that Marx is humanism. Marxism is humanism. Marx is humanistic. To solve this, to get back structuralism to Marxism, Althusser says that young Marx and mature Marx are two very different persons. There is epistemological break, epistemological rupture or break to the ideas of young Marx and mature Marx. What does epistemology mean? Theory of knowledge, explanation of knowledge. So the explanation of knowledge of young Marx and mature Marx are two very different things. Ideas of young Marx and mature Marx are very two different. So you cannot analyze Marxism with analysis of young Marx. You have to analyze mature Marx. That is why analyzing Marxism through a lens of humanism is problematic. You have to limit yourself to the ideas of mature Marx because Marx self evolved from analyzing freedom to analyzing revolution to bring out revolution. This is what concept of problematic explains. Basically says that young Marx and mature Marx are two very different things. are two very different people. There are two very different philosophers. Ideas are very two different things. That is why Sartre is wrong to limit Marxism to humanism. You have to analyze Marx ideas of revolution. You have to analyze Marx through through revolution. You have to analyze Marx structuralism. So this was structural Marxism. This was concept of Althusser. This was structuralism, and this was how Althusser tried to save Marxism from onslaught attack of J.P. Sartre to make it humanistic. Right? So this was structural Marxism, and we have not yet done with Althusser. We'll understand Althusser more in the next lecture, whereby we understand his ideas of ideology, what does interpellation means, and what does ideological state apparatus, repressive state apparatus mean. In the next lecture, I hope you understood structural Marxism, and will understand Althusser more in the next lecture. I hope to see you in the next lecture. Bye bye.